Hey everyone, Dan Saavedra here from mergerdata.com. Today we're going to be going over how you can configure a way for your team to identify bad leads and then have that filter back to people who can fix that problem. So a problem that we've come across a lot is that you're running ad campaigns or you're running some type of marketing effort in general, and a contact submits their information, but it's a bad phone number, it's a bad email, or they're not qualified. And so when you have team members calling these people, there needs to be an easy way to identify whether or not they have bad data so you can report and see and change basically what types of marketing efforts are creating poorly qualified leads, especially if you're doing a high volume. And so there's a couple ways to do this, and we're going to walk through that today. So I'm in the HubSpot portal here. First thing I'm going to do is go up into the settings, and then I'm going to scroll down to our objects, and we're already in contacts here, but if you're not, then you can go to contacts, and then you can go to manage contact properties. And then there's two ways of tracking this. And depending on how your team operates, one way will be better than the other. So I'll show you both ways here. The first way is a great way to prevent any type of property creep, adding a property that's not necessary. And that's by modifying the lead status. So we can modify the lead status here by clicking on edit. And then what we can do is we can create another option and say bad lead or bad info or whatever you want to put there to identify that this is not a good lead for your team. So I'm just going to put bad lead and click on save. And that's one way you can track this. We're going to go further in terms of the configuration of the UI and stuff like that. For the second method, you can create another property and then add it to any group that you want if you have custom groups. If you want to, let's see, probably would just include it on contact information, to be honest. But then we would put bad lead here. And then for the field type, we would just be selecting single checkbox. And then I always uncheck this because I don't need it in forms, pop-up forms, or bots. Click on create. And there we have it. And so this isn't the end because obviously we want this to be quick and accessible for your team. And so what we're going to do is we're going to go back to the contact settings. And then we're going to go to record customization. And then we're going to customize the left sidebar here. And in this test account, we don't have any team views set up, but I would highly recommend using it for a use case like this because we don't want someone like an account manager to see the bad lead property if that's what you added, or they might not be interested in lead status. So we only want that to show up for teams and users who are part of the setting process, the calling cold leads, calling warm leads process. So how we're going to do that is we're going to create a team view. And then I'm going to assign this to our setters since that's the relevant team for this account setup that we have, this demo account setup. And then what you can do is you can just search in the section editor here for one of the properties depending on which one you configured. So if it's lead status, it'll most likely already be here, and so you don't have to configure anything. But if you use the custom property, then you would want to add bad lead here. So one thing to note, and this has changed recently, if I remember correctly, but this is an account-wide section, and so if you're editing sections, it's going to have an impact across all left sidebar views for all teams. And so what we want to do instead is add a new section here, and I'm just going to do lead quality. And you could get fancy and make this section conditional if you want, based off of other property values. So let's say like life cycle stage, so maybe something before an SQL would show this section here. But once we add this section, we're gonna go and add bad lead here, and then I'm gonna save this as setter left sidebar lead quality and click on save and publish. And now that's available here. And so we'll be able to edit or delete this view if we want. But I'm going to show you what this looks like for a user. And then what we're going to do is we're going to go into the reporting and how you can make a dynamic report to basically show what campaigns, what ads, what sources are leading to these bad leads. So if I go into my first contact and then scroll down here, you can see that I have the, oops, scroll too far. You can see I have the bad lead property here. So now it's as simple as someone just selecting yes here, and then that's it. And so now we have a bad lead marked, and the team will be able to take action on that. So now let's dive into the actual report that we're going to build. And so I'm going to go to reporting here. And actually, before I do that, let me just change my, let me just change my lead status as well to bad lead, so that we have both of those properties to work off of. And I'm going to go over to reports here. We're going to create a new report. And one note is a lot of people might choose something like attribution for this one, but this makes it difficult to have a dynamic report that's showing all the new bad lead contacts that are added. So what I'm going to do instead is go to Custom Report Builder. We're going to keep contacts here as a primary data source, and we're just going to add this add interactions by contact, and then click on next. So the first thing that I like to do, because I always miss this, is I like to go change the time frame filter here. And I'm just going to max this out to 1860 for add interactions. And one note is this report that we're building right now is more centered around if you're doing paid advertising. If you're not doing paid advertising, then this report will look a little bit different. And we can jump into a quick example afterwards. It'll be a really quick change in terms of the data sources and the configuration here. But we changed the event timestamp filter. Now what we're going to do is we're going to search for bad lead. And then we're just going to do is any of yes. And then if you have lead status as the option that you're using instead, then obviously you would just go here, lead status, and then we're going to do bad lead. And then for this example, I'm just going to switch to any of the filters below so that it wouldn't affect filtering, even though we should only have one example. And then what we're going to do is we are going to use a pivot table. I'm going to drop on count of contacts. Let's see. Yeah, I'll do count of contacts for the values. And then depending on what data you want to see, I believe you're limited to the number of rows that you can drop on. But I always like to start with original source. And then what we want to do is search for, what I like to do is just search for name here. And use these add group name, add campaign name properties to break down the data even further. So we're going to add on the add campaign name here, and this probably won't have any sample data since it's a demo account. So I go here, add campaign name, and then usually add group name is the next breakdown. And it really depends on how many ads you run. Drop add name down. And usually that's a good report to get started, so then you'll be able to identify marketing efforts or ads that really aren't bringing in the highest quality leads, so you can modify those. Some of the other properties that could be useful, there's also ad network and network placement. So with network placement, let's say you are running on both Facebook and Instagram, you'll be able to see that breakdown there to see if, Instagram's pulling in a lot of unqualified leads, but the Facebook leads are actually pretty decent. So those are some useful properties that you can use. And you can really modify these reports however you see fit. Obviously, if you're configuring this, you probably know of other properties that you all use that could be useful for reporting. And so we'll go over one more thing here. If you're not using ads as your primary way of getting new contacts and leads, then we can change this report so that it's useful still, because right now the filter is based off of ad interactions here, so all events. But instead what we're going to do is edit data sources, and we're going to remove this ad interactions by contact and then just click on apply. So we're just using a very simple report here. We're gonna go back over to filters just to check that we still have these filters in place. And then when you're configuring here, we'll still use count of contacts, we'll still use original source. But what you can do is you can start using other properties here. If you want to look into the original source drill down properties, you can use that. If you wanted to look at any other types of activities, then you could drop those in here and find the contacts that are relevant and which sources are basically bringing in the least qualified contacts. So this is another way of doing it if you're not using ads. You might have custom properties that you're using to track where leads and contacts are coming from outside of ads as well. So you could use those in this report. And one last note is that there's probably some pretty cool automations that you could build in terms of workflows when someone identifies a bad lead. So that might be another area just to brainstorm with your team and see what you can do. So hopefully this video was helpful. My name is Dan Saavedra from mergerdata.com. Thanks for watching.